Lowell Alcott was unable to join us this week. He should be back with us next week. Unfortunately, his schedule didn't allow him to join us this week. So we will go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so from popular requests from last week, we are going to start this week with a brand new show file. So the first thing I want to do is show you guys which version we're running this week. As I mentioned last week, every 2 weeks when we do these sessions, I'll be running the current beta. So last week we were in 3.0 build 330. This week we are in build 336. So just moving right along with the beta process. So, and you can see that right there on my screen, which version that is. Okay, and then actually before we jump into there, I want to do a, I'll show you guys a couple where we're going here. I forgot to mention this. So we've said this before. This series will be a little freeform in that we're gonna go for a couple hours each week and get as far as we get. I kind of have a rough outline of where we want to go and where I hope to get. But if we need to spend a little more time on questions on a certain topic, we're going to do that. We don't have to get to a certain point each week. So this is on your screen is what we covered last week back in session 1. This is what I'm planning to go over today. We may get through all this, we may not, depending on how much, how long each section takes. And let you guys look at those. Basically, we're going to be adding in fixtures into a new file and then looking at a lot of the editing tools we have in the augmented space. And then moving forward for our next session, we're going to look at some additional options in the augmented space. We'll go through some of the visual choices, menus, and then the big ones next week are looking at snapshots and XYZ focus palettes. And again, these may shift a little bit between week to week depending on where we go. And then after that, we'll look at staging mode, some edit mode, scenic element channels, and then how to go between the augmented model and magic sheets, both directions. And then the last session I have listed here, this doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the session. We have some other ideas of what we may do after this, but the last one I'll show right now is fixture pose estimation, which I'll kind of reference today a little bit. We'll really dive into it when we get to it in a few weeks here. Focus wand, and then some Vectorworks questions. I know you guys have a lot of those Vectorworks questions. Okay, so let's go back to sharing the software here. There we go. And then just as a final reminder, if you're watching this live, it is not our intent, just like last week, for you to follow along with us with the software. I think we'll be moving a little too quickly for that to work really well. If you are watching this on the recording, which we will post as soon as it's available, it usually takes about a day or two, then you're more than welcome to follow along, because then you can pause me and restart me as speed up, slow down as needed. Okay, so I think that's all my disclaimers. So let's go ahead and do one of the scariest things you can do in EOS here, and go File, New. And I'm going to continue without saving. So I mentioned this last week, but just to hit it one more time. So there is a new checkbox here in 3.0. So whenever you do a new show file, you have the option to preserve your model. So if you've built your venue and you want to keep that from show file to show file, you can check that box, and it will basically nuke the show file except for your augmented model. For today, I'm going to uncheck that because I want to start from a truly clean slate. I say OK. And I'm just going to reset my views here, my workspaces. I had a couple tabs left over there. OK, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the augmented window here in a new tab. Last week we covered which systems can run it in a tab and which can't. If you have questions about that, feel free to check out last week's video. And I'm going to hit my camera and hit my home position. A lot of the navigation, moving around the space, we went over last week. So I'm not going to spend too much time this week talking about what buttons I'm holding to move around. If you guys have questions about that, go ahead and put it in there. But all of that was covered in our session last week. So as a brief review, I'm going to hit my edit button in the top right here just so we can see our axes. We're going to be dealing with XYZ a lot today, so I just wanted to hit this one more time. So in a 3D space, we have an X, a Y, and a Z axis. So in here, X is red, green, Y is green, and Z is blue. So last time we came up with the little jingle XYZ RGB, which is a good way to remember it. So this is so where those three meet, so where my cursor is right now, is the origin of our model. So that is 0, 0, 0, X, Y, and Z. And we can go negative and positive for each of these. So in a theater space, like in a, we'll say proscenium, a best practice might be to have your X axis be your center line, your Y axis could be the upstage side of your plaster line, and your Z, sorry, not your axis, your origins. And then your Z origin would be the height of your stage, of your deck. And that way, when you're placing objects, which we'll do shortly here, you can say, oh, I know that it's 3 feet left of center, 9 feet upstage of plaster line, and its trim is 20 feet. Those are things we're kind of used to working with in theater already. If you're in a non-traditional space, you can make the origin whatever you want based on how you place things in the model. So just be cognizant of it and pick something that makes sense so that you can use it as you go and you're not struggling to figure out all this math later on. And then in addition to where an object is, like that, if it's 5 feet left of center, 3 feet downstage of plaster, wherever it is, we're also going to be talking about its rotation. So once an object is at a point in space, at a 3D point, it can also be rotated in those 3 dimensions as well. So we're going to look at this with fixtures. So we have positional information, which is XYZ. We have rotational information with XYZ, and those 6 pieces of data combined are called pose information. So you'll hear us use that term, pose, as well. And then it's also worth noting that every object has a base point, and that is the exact location where all of those numbers are coming from. So with our fixtures, so with a source 4, for example, the base point is actually a few inches above the top of the yoke, because that's where the C-clamp would intersect with the pipe. So that is what we use as the base point for that object. Some objects, they're in the center, some they're on one end. It depends object by object. And we'll work with those throughout the day today. Okay, so since I did start a new show file, I need to quickly go into setup and be on my augmented tab here. And I want to make sure that I'm in feet inches. Apologize to anyone who's not in the US and you'd prefer to use meters. We are going to use feet and inches today. And remember, that means that if I type in 1.6, that's going to be 1 foot 6 inches, is what that feet inches indicates. Great. So let's go back here. And I'm going to do a little split screen here for the first part of this. We're going to be bouncing between the model and patch a lot. And since I'm doing this all on one screen today, I'm going to just do a split screen with those 2 so we can see everything happening at once. So I'm going to do my model on the left and patch on the right, and then I'll leave my CIA open down here for everyone to see. Okay, let's patch some fixtures. So I'm going to do 1 through 9 at 1 enter. I'm just going to patch 9 dimmers, 9, we'll say this was 4s, 1 to 1 for now, just because it's easy. And in our model, nothing has changed, which we'll get to in just a sec. So in order to make fixtures appear in our model from patch, we have to give them some positional information. So in the CIA here in patch, you can see that these patch attributes and database in 3.0 have moved from the soft key area over here on the left, and then we've added augmented as well. So we're going to go to that section first. And we've got a couple of tabs here. Today we'll be focusing on the position and orientation tab. So this allows us to provide those 6 pieces of data that we were talking about. So I have in feet inches, I have XYZ, that's the location, and then I have degrees of rotation for XYZ as well. Okay, so I'm going to just select channel 1 for the moment. And I'm going to give it a Z dimension, and I'm going to say 15.6, so 15.5 feet, and press enter. And you can see that that has now instantly appeared in my model. Let's get my display set here. There we go. So in patch here, in the augmented section, you can see that there's a position and an orientation column. I'm going to collapse label down. We don't need that today, just so we can see both of these sections. So as soon as there is a bit of positional data, that fixture is going to appear in augmented. And because I only gave it the Z information, the X and Y are still at 0, because I haven't changed those. The rotation is all at 0, but I do have a fixture over here in my model. So if I wanted to rotate that fixture, I could click my X field here. I'm going to type in 45 degrees, and that fixture is going to tip 45 degrees forward. There are ways to manipulate all of this in the model as well, and we'll look at that next. So let's go ahead and back on our patch window, I'm going to reselect all 9 of those, and I'm going to set their Y value. You can see these have a star now. That's indicating that different channels in my selection have different values. That's because of channel 1 has some values and the rest of them don't. So that's why that star is there. Okay, so I'm going to click on the Y, and I'm going to give that a -18. So I'm going to place all of these 18 feet downstage of my origin, which we'll say is plaster line for today. And it still looks, you'll notice in the model, like there's only one fixture there, but that's because they're all physically on top of each other. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, 2 through 9, their Z is at 0, so they're actually under the floor right now. So when I change all of the Z values to 25, there we go. So now, I'll move the model a little. So now channel 1 is the one that's pointed up because we gave that one an orientation, and 2 through 9 are all stacked on top of each other right here. So they are all in the model now. We just can't really see the separation of them yet. So let's go ahead and spread those out across our we'll say it's a pipe right now. And we will get to adding truss and scenic objects a little bit later, but I'll start with fixtures today. So I'm going to start on center. So these 9 lights are going to be spread across a pipe. So that center one, the X value is going to be 0, because that's on my center line. And I'm going to work backwards. So I'm going to go to 4, and I'm going to put that at -3 feet. And I'm going to put 3 at -6 feet. So these are all on 3-foot centers. That one will be -9, and channel 1 will be -12. So I've now spread those across here. You can see in the model. You've probably also noticed that as I select fixtures, they turn on in the model. That's to assist with focusing and adding attributes as you're going. So there is also a way to fan these. You don't have to manually go in and select every fixture. So let's look at how to do that. So I'm going to say 5 through 9. And this position button, or position field here, I'm going to click on that. Let's make sure we're in patch here. So 5 through 9, position. And now I can type things in on my command line. So the first way I want to look at this is I'm going to type 0 through 12. And I'm going to press enter, and then I'm going to explain what happened here. So you can look at, let's look at the command line first. So you'll see there's some slashes and stars down there. So each position has 3 dimensions, right? X, Y, and Z. And I only specified a number, 0 through and 12. And since X is first, it assumed that I was talking about the X dimension here. So the /star after the 0 and after the 12 on the command line refer to the Y and Z, meaning no change to those. So basically I said 5 through 9, position, I want to take those channels and spread them on the X between 0 and 12 feet. And it assumes feet because that's the mode we're in. If you look here in the patch window, you can see that that's exactly what happened. So this one's at 0, channel 6 went to 3, next one to 6, 9, and 12. So it distributed them evenly between those 2 dimensions. Okay, just to illustrate this in kind of a way you'd probably not actually do, but it visually makes the point pretty well. So I'm going to select all 9 of those and click position again. And I'm going to say //3 through //21. So now I'm only referring to the Z axis. I'm leaving X and Y alone. So when I press enter, it's going to fan those through the air. So channel 1 is at 3 feet off the ground, 3 feet height, and channel 9 is at 21, and the other ones are fanned in between on those dimensions. And you can see those numbers here in the patch field. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at one more way we can do this on the command line. So I'm going to select last, make sure we're on the patch side here, select last, and I can say, I'm going to do // select last position, there we go, // +3. If I would learn my keyboard shortcuts, that would help. There we go. So what this is going to do is add 3 feet to whatever dimension it's already at. So if you just look at the model, when I press enter, they've all gone up vertically 3 feet. I can also do that to subtract. And the syntax here is ±3, and I'll talk about why that you have to have that plus there in just a second. So if I hit enter here, they're all going to come down 3 feet. And this works for all 3 dimensions. You can slide things on the pipe on your X with a plus or plus minus or Y as well. So as a reminder about why we need that plus minus there, if I click position //3, so this is an absolute value, and these conventions are true throughout the console as well. This works with intensity everywhere. You can use this for pan and tilt values. You know, anything on the command line that you can affect. The way this is handled is the same. So if I say 3 without any plus or minus, it's going to set them all at 3 feet. That's an absolute value. So put them all at 3. If I say //-3, it's not going to subtract 3 feet. It's going to put them at -3 feet, which is actually under the stage. Okay, so those are both absolute values. I'm saying go to 3 feet, go to -3 feet on the Z axis. If I say +3, now it's a relative. So now we're adding. So that's going to put them at 0. And then I can say position // plus minus 3 is going to do that subtraction again. So just to clarify, that's why we have to have that plus minus, because that tells the console I'm doing an offset from where it is. I'm not giving it a negative value. So for the moment, we are going to put all of these at 25. So I'm going to stick them back up there. Okay, so next I'm going to add a couple LED fixtures, and this is done exactly the same way. So I'm going to say 11 through 16. We are going to make this a color source spot. And I will talk about that 3D logo in just a moment. And they'll be deep blue direct. And this time I'm not going to give them an address, but they will still show up in the model. And at the end of this section, we'll kind of look at how what information is needed for things to be in the model or not in the model. So now we're going to give them some position. So they're not in the model yet because they don't have any positional data. So we're going to say position, and these are going to be /3/18. So what I'm saying is I don't want to change the X value, the X position, but the Y position is going to be 3 feet. So it's going to be 3 feet upstage of my plaster line, and they're all going to be 18 feet high. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and that will make them appear in the model. And again, they're all stacked on top of each other right now because they have the same X value. And then I want to take 14 through 16, and those are actually going to have a Y. And this time I'm just going to click the Y box over here. It's the same as doing it on the command line, just however you like to work. And those are going to be 11 feet. So now I'll move the model a little bit here so you can see better. Kind of look up from above. So what I'm working on creating is I'm going to have 2 pipes with some pipe end fixtures spread across them. So if you look in patch, you can see they all have the same X value, which is center. The first 3 are 3 feet upstage, the next 3 are 11 feet upstage, and they're all that height of 18 feet. So let's go ahead and give them some X dimensions. So this one is going to be -30. It's going to be all the way at the end of my pipe. Let's move that so you can see it. This one's going to be -20. So these are on 10-foot spacings. So that one's -20. Whoops. That was the Y. Let's put that back at 3. Let's make the X -20. There we go. And then 13, the X is going to be -10. And then 14 through 16 are going to have those same X dimensions, but they will be on the second electric. So they're on this 11-foot. So here we'll do our range again. So we'll click position, and I will say -30 through -10. And because we're doing the X, I don't have to type the slashes. It's going to fill those in for me when I hit enter. So we've got kind of our far fixtures here on the first and second electric, our mid fixture, first and second electric, and our close fixtures, first and second electric. And then I want to grab all of those and give them a rotation of -45. So I have an idea, oh yeah, those are side light. Okay, great. We will look at other ways to aim fixtures. We'll talk about that later. But this 45 is a good way to just kind of rough those in so they're pointed generally in the correct direction instead of having everything pointed straight down. Okay, so I've been going for a while. Why don't we take a little question break? Jason, what do we got?
Yes, we get a couple of questions come in. One of them is from Brandon. He's asking, as these all seem to be syntax functions at the command line base, does that mean the rules of undo will work here as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, everything in here you can undo. We talked last week a little bit about how undo in the model doesn't function the way we would think, but because it is tied to patch, undo will certainly work here. And then I'll also mention there may be a question here that these are all also macroable. So you could have macros that move your X position a foot, or, negative a foot, positive a foot, move your rotation, anything you want to do like that, you could build as well.
All right. Is there a way to use the encoders for position and rotation in Patch?
I believe that is currently not something, and I'm on Nomad. Let me double check here. I don't think we can do that yet, and we are going to get to shutters in a moment, which I know is something we want to move to encoders, but is currently not on there. So at this time, no, but I believe that is on the list for future development.
Okay. Is it possible to have more than one fixture on a single channel or dimmer? So like if you're two-for-ing or something like that.
I saw a note about that. Nick, are you with us? Do you know I know that it's something that's being worked on, and I don't know the answer.
Yeah, so you deal with that by making multiple parts to the same channel, I believe. And the biggest issue with that has been the aim tool. I think, as Rob mentioned, we're this is beta software still. We're going to be sort of reimagining the aim tool in the next couple of builds. So hopefully in 2 weeks, when you all are back joining us, we'll have sort of a new way that stuff works. So use your parts and know that aiming will be changing to facilitate that to make it easier.
Yeah, I just patched part 2 into 16, and I can give it independent position, so that works without a problem.
All right. Just to confirm, when you're doing // you're not putting the asterisks in, right? That's all happening automatically in the command line?
Correct. If you don't specify something, the console will put that asterisk there for you. Yep. And I've got, when we do moving lights in a few minutes here, I'll show an example where you punch in all the numbers.
Is there a way to use the offset button when you're doing this patch? We looked at command line fanning. Is there a way to use offset as well?
Yes, you can use offset in patch. So I'll just show that real quick. So I can say 11 through 16, offset 2. I could select every other one and then add, well, I probably wouldn't do it this way, and then add values to any of their axes that I needed to. Yep.
Okay. Is there any mirror tool? Any way to mirror if you have a symmetrical rig?
There is currently not. The other thing that is on our list, but is currently not there, is to be able to use copy to and recall from for position. So currently that is not available in patch here, but it's something we want to add in.
That was actually my next question. Can you use recall from and copy to? All right. The height is based upon the bottom of the fixture or the pipe clamp. We talked about this last week, but just to confirm right now.
Yeah, so the height should be based on the origin point of the fixture, although observant folks probably noticed that when I had them at 0, they were like split in the floor. So that seems like a bug to me. It should definitely be based on the origin point of the fixture, which in the case of an ellipsoidal is the C-clamp.
Ben asks, do the control consoles work differently on Nomad? Is it easier to set up on one versus the other?
Not necessarily. I'm definitely missing a second monitor right now for all the stuff that I'm doing, because I find it very helpful to see the model and patch at the same time, which is why I'm doing this split screen today. Just makes it all very, very small. The setup works exactly the same. Once we get into the edit mode of the model, it is very mouse driven. So that, obviously you can use a mouse on a console or a laptop, but it's, those tools are very mouse driven. So it's not really something that being on a console will help you with, because you're not really using that keypad.
Michael always wants to confirm, it seems like rotating a fixture on the x-axis tips it upstage. It seems like it should actually be the y-axis. Can you explain why the x-axis goes up downstage? naming a fixture?
Yeah, so here, let's, which fixture's on this channel 1? Yeah, so the x-axis, so it's rotating it on the x-axis, so it's going to be perpendicular to that axis. So I'm swinging, so basically x is going to be tilt. So if I put this x back to 0, we're at -45. That's moving it perpendicular to its to the x-axis. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I don't think I explained that very well. Yeah, thanks, Nick.
You sort of think of a line that goes through the fixture. So if the x-axis is running through the fixture, if you rotate that line, that's where that object's going to rotate. So if, you know, almost like a pipe that goes through the unit, if you turn it that way, that's it. And Dustin just said, so it's rotating about the x-axis. That's correct, right? We're not moving it in the x direction. We're moving it along, about that axis.
How do you select what fixture goes into the model on a dimmer channel? So far, it's been.
You broke up a little bit for me there, Jason, but I think I understand the question. It sounds like they're asking what object is going in for a dimmer. So right now, anything that you put in as a dimmer is going to show up as a source 4. If I zoom in, you can see those. So right now, everything has a default object associated with it. Obviously, we understand that you may want this to be a parkan or something else. That is something that we're looking at down the road for you to do. Right now, every fixture, whether we have data for it or not, has an associated object in the model. So when we get to moving lights, I'll talk about this a little more. But some moving lights, we have all that information, so it's going to look really accurate. It's going to look just like that specific model of fixture. And for fixtures that we don't, we have kind of a default. We know it's a moving spot, so we have kind of a default spot. And the dimensions may be, you know, significantly different than the one you actually have in your rig. That is a limitation of what we're working with right now, but in the future, we do hope to allow you to customize what those model objects look like based on the fixture type.
All right.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Just a reminder that, you know, there are some generic models, right? So if you go into the generic library, you can create, you can select different things. I believe Yuli said that Parkan and Fresnel are available. There may be others as well.
Okay.
But when Rob shows you the 3D symbol, right, that's going to allow you to see that there's models associated with that.
Let's see what a parkan looks like. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Julie. So the only thing that would add is just the step of selecting a different fixture type. You know, when you just say 1 through 9 at 1, it assumes dimmer. So you'd have to pick a fixture type of parkan or Fresnel. Great.
All right. I know we can change the beam angles, but what is the default beam angle of the generic dimmer fixture?
Oh, I knew someone was going to ask that question, and Lowell's not here. It is wider than 26, because in just a moment we're going to change these to 26, and it shrinks down. So I don't know if it is something defined like 36, or if there's some other math behind that. So to get a good answer, I'll have to when we get to that point, I'll look at it and see if we can like punch in 36 and see if it looks the same. But I don't know the answer to that.
All right. I know this might be jumping ahead, but it does relate to this a little bit. If you group channels together in Augmented, will adjusting the position patch cause the entire group to react or just the selected channel?
Grouping fixtures together, yeah, so we'll get to that a little bit later on, but
okay.
Basically there are ways to move things as groups or not.
All right.
Anything else?
Excellent. So yeah, no, so if we're thinking about this, for dimmer-based channels, we only have the default model and cannot customize based on lens or other fixture. Do we have a sense of what the assumed properties are? That's kind of related to a lot of what we've been talking about right now.
So we can change the lens, which we're going to look at next, but the actual model is representational. And I'll talk about this quite a bit when we get to the scenic objects. But and we kind of hit on this last week or 2 weeks ago as well. So this, we're not trying to be a photorealistic visualizer here. It's more about the light and speed as a programmer. It's the light coming out of the fixtures is more important to us than what the actual fixture looks like in the rig. So while we do want to provide as much accuracy as we can to a reasonable degree, making the fixtures look 100% accurate is not our top priority.
Excellent. So I think that's it for questions for right now.
Okay. Great. So let's look at, this is a good lead in. So the next thing we're going to do is change that beam angle. So I'm just going to leave that parkan hanging out there because I like it. So let's go ahead. I'm going to grab 11 through 16. So these are our side lights. And it's still in the augmented section of patch here. There's a beam angle field. So I'm going to choose that and say 26, and those will go down here. So just to try and answer that question, if I remove the beam angle, it looks about like that. If I give it 36, it didn't change at all. So based on that, I would say perhaps 36 is the default, but I would still want Lowell to chime in if there's different beam angles, for example, that parkan, etc. Oops. So let's put those back at 26 there. And again, this is something you could make a macro of in your bank of setup, patch macros, if you want to. Okay, so shutters we can also do. And the other thing I'll mention overall here is that all of these tools are in patch for static fixtures. And that's because we don't want to, when we get to moving lights, we don't want to accidentally cue in the changing of a gel of a static fixture because you can't actually do that, and it would be easy to cue those in. So we've purposefully moved these configuration tools into patch so that you set it and then you run your show and cue your show normally without being able to modify these pictures on a cue level or a palette level or something like that. So shutters for fixed focus, non-moving lights are right here. So if I click on that, I'm going to get a tool that's going to look a lot like our shutter control for moving lights here in patch. And this is what I was mentioning earlier. These are currently not available on the encoders, but we are looking into that. So I have the ability, and I have all fixed selected here. So I can push that shutter in. I can rack it around here. And obviously, if your scenery is in, you could cut it off legs or flats or something here. But you can make whatever shutter adjustments you need to here. And then to clear those out, you can just click shutters and press enter, and those will all get pulled back out. And again, kind of the theme of all of these tools is spend the time on this setup for what's useful to you. If you don't need conventional fixtures in your augmented model at all, maybe you don't need to spend all this time. If your whole rig is conventionals and you're using it as a visual tool for your stage manager or director, then maybe it is worth it for you to spend the time getting all the shutter cuts correct. So it's really based on your use, much like we've said with Magic Sheets for years. So now we're going to put in a Gobo. So I'm going to go to our database section here and put in Gobo. And this field has been here for a while, but now we have a Gobo catalog here. So I'm going to go to Roscoe and say Steel Gobos. And currently the catalog is in here, but they are not numbered. I know someone's probably typing that question as we speak. So that is certainly something we want to add, not necessarily something we're going to be able to have in there for first release. So these, I'm going to select this one, and it will tell me that it's Roscoe bamboo stems here, but that Roscoe number is not there yet in the database. And then, of course, this will also show up in our field, in our patch database up here. So I'm going to zoom in on those a little bit so we can see those Gobos a little better. So the other thing we can do here, I'm going to go back to my augmented tab. So I have Gobo rotate. So I'm going to type in 90 degrees, and I can spin those in the fixture just like I've pulled the pattern holder out and turned the Gobo and stuck it back in there. So if your Gobos are not oriented correctly, you can fix it there. And then I also have a beam edge parameter. So this defaults to, this can go from 0 to 100. If there's nothing there, it's basically the same as 50, which is sharp. So if I put in 25, it'll be a little blurrier. If I put in 0, as if I've run that barrel all the way, we'll say in. And then if I click it and say enter, it'll go back to sharp. And then we've had this before, but we'll show it here as well. If I select my front light, so the ones we've been working on here are color changing, so I want to select some that are not color changing. These are just good old regular source 4s. And so we can also put gel in those. And this field has been here for a long time, but now we'll actually see it in the model as well. So if I click gel, and I can say R68 or R for Roscoe, 68. And in addition to being in the patch database, showing me the gel with the color swatch, I can now see that color in the model space as well. And then the final option we have here is this hide beam. And I think we touched on this last week, but let's go ahead and look at how this works. So I'm going to select just channel 1, and I'm going to go ahead and enable hide beam. So you see it disappeared from the floor there. But if I spin around and get to where I can see the front of the fixture here, you can see that it is still light coming out of the front of that fixture. So this is what we talked about. Here, let me go live, and let me turn on all of those. So the rest of them have the actual beam coming out, whereas this one we've hidden that beam. So this might be really useful for if you have like an LED wall with little pucks, or practicals on your set, or something that you want to see indication that it's on, or indication of its intensity and color, but you don't want it actually throwing light out into the model. So we have that option on a per channel basis there. And I'm going to home my camera, so we're kind of back to the front here. And then again, so just a couple reminders in patch here. So anytime we have channels selected in patch, it's going to turn on, so we can make those modifications and kind of see what we're doing. And then just I said this a moment ago, but just to hit on it, this is all optional. Like, this is all a new tool that we're adding into the software. None of what we're doing here today is going to change how you program, your shows. It's going to give you some visual feedback. It's going to allow you to maybe pre-queue your shows and get an idea. It works in blind like we looked at last time. But so it's up to you to decide how much time you want to spend configuring all this, if it's worth your time, your tech process time. Like if it improves your tech process time, then you can spend as much time as you like on that. But again, none of this is required. And then as far as Nick said this, but I'll mention it again, our aim tool, which is a way to focus conventionals, pan tilt of conventionals, is currently, as we speak, undergoing some big changes. So we would have covered that today, but we're going to save that for next week, 2 weeks from now, so we have the new updated tools available to show everybody. The last thing in patch here that we're not going to go over today, but just to point it out, so FPE, so we'll cover this in a few weeks. We'll talk about what that is, and then FPE set obviously relates to that. So we will go over those features and setup once we do FPE in a few weeks. Okay, Jason, any questions come in about the fixture properties here? And then we'll move on to moving lights. Did I lose Jason?
Jason, it appears that you.
It would help if I unmute. Sorry about that. I had a whole question out there, and I'll learn how to drive this eventually. So a lot of questions about park hands and dealing with non-round beams. Is there any way right now to handle something with an oval-shaped beam?
Let's see. I have not played with that. But let's take a look. What channel was my park hand? It was 18, yeah. My guess is that there's not. Like, I change my beam angle to 50, so I can definitely alter the beam angle the same way. But there is, I wonder if it'll let me do shutters on the park hand. It will. That's funny. So I don't think there is currently. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer than that. And Lowell, again, that's a question for Lowell. I'll put that on the Lowell list. And we can see if we can get him here or on the phone by the end of it.
A similar question that came in was about rotating the barrel assembly like you can do in a Source 4. So when you're doing the shutter cuts, can you also rotate?
We can rotate each shutter independently. Right now, there's not that full rotate like we have for moving lights, which on a Source 4 would also affect the Gobo rotation, of course. But that's a good idea. So for right now, you can get it to look correct, but it's not all one step. You'd have to rotate your shutters and your Gobo independently. But that is a good idea.
If you put in a frost gel, does that affect the output?
I don't know. Let's try it. So let's grab channel 2 so we can see the beam. And what's the frost gel? Roscoe 125, is that one? 124? I haven't used those in a while.
119?
Oh yeah. So it does not.
Right.
But we could do that with the beam or the sharpness. I think. Let's see if that works without a Gobo. It does. So you could kind of fake it with that beam edge parameter.
Okay. When we're putting in gels, can we use the EOS shortcuts like 3/, 5/, etc.?
In patch, and this has been a long-running request in patch. Actually, hang on. I think the answer is no currently, but let me make sure. Yeah, because it brings up the keyboard. So if you typed in,
yeah,
if I could find it. Yeah, like if I type in 3/, no, 3/26. I don't believe that works. Yeah, so in patch, we do have to use R or L or G, but which is how it's been for a long time. But that is definitely on our list.
It's a good
To be
note.
able to do that.
We had a couple of questions that came in regards to importing either Shutter or Gobo or color information from Vectorworks or Lightright. Is that something you're going to cover in this session, or is that going to come in one of our later sessions in the series?
We'll cover that in our Vectorworks session.
Okay.
As far as what comes over and what doesn't.
All right. Are Gobo rotators supported at all?
I am not sure. Nick, you're back. Do you know that answer?
Yeah, we're not currently supporting accessories for 3.0. So Gobo rotators are not going to be functional, and also IQs, so moving mirrored accessories for your convention fixtures. Those won't be in 3.0. Those are high on the list to get done, but it's a whole bunch of different maps. So we will be coming out with those in a future release.
And I believe moving mirrors in general are not supported in the first release, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Mark was asking if you can search for a Gobo by its name as opposed to its pattern number.
Yeah, that's part of what I was saying. You cannot right now. So it's by manufacturer, and then you kind of have to just look for it, which we know is not ideal. But for now, that's how it is.
Yeah, this is a sticky area right now, and it's not going to be done for 3.0. So one of the workarounds that I have found, if you don't like trying to scan through these tiny thumbnails and mount stuff up, if you import a Gobo as custom, that's a quick and easy way to find it, right? You can put stuff in through the custom library. So it isn't ideal for now, but that's a way to sort of minimize the things you have to scan through if you know what Gobos you're bringing in.
And the last question I have for this section is just to confirm, when you are in patch and it turns on the fixture, does it turn the fixture on stage or not?
Oh, great question. No, it does not. So the current rules, and I believe we've just settled on these very recently, but everything is subject to change, of course, is when we go into patch and nothing is selected, it will continue to display what is happening live on stage, just like right now. So here, just to show what I did here. So I'm in live now. This is my look on stage, for better or worse. If I go into patch, my model doesn't change at all until I start selecting things. Once I select things, now it's showing me the selected unit or units. Now I can select multiple things at once. And no, that is having no effect on your live output. So great question.
Excellent. So I think that's everything right now. There's a couple questions left, but we'll be hitting them further on the road, I believe.
Great. Well, let's add some moving lights. So I'm going to be in patch here, and I'm going to do 101 through 105, because if you've ever done our training, these are always our front of house moving lights. So these are going to be Solar Frame 1000s. I'm just going to use our search function here. Actually, let me back that up to show this that I said I would show. So here you can see some fixtures have that 3D symbol at the front. So the Solar Frame 1500s don't, for example. So that is an example of a fixture that if you choose it, we're going to give we don't have the exact dimensions of that fixture, so we're going to put in a placeholder fixture. And this is something that as we go through the through the development process for years to come, we'll continue to add to this. But when we start, last I heard, there was 50 or 60 moving lights that we had precise data for. It might be more than that now. I'm not sure. So that's something we will continue to add to. But that 3D logo is a quick indicator of if it is true data or just kind of placeholder generic data. So that's what that means. For today, we're going to make these be Solar Frame 1000 ultra bright fixtures. And again, they're not in the model yet because they don't have any positional information. I do want to give these an address so that when we start removing them, I can show those examples. So I'm going to put these at 2/201 with an offset of 50. And again, not appearing in the model yet because there's still not any positional data. So let's go ahead and put that in there. So here I'm going to do a range. I'm going to do this all at once. We've been kind of doing it piecemeal to show you all how it works, but now I'll just show you how you can do it all in one step. So I'm going to say -20. I'm going to do a range. So -20 on the X, so 20 feet stage right of my center line. These are -25 on the Y, so they are 25 feet downstage of plaster line. So these are in the front of house, and their trim is going to be 24 feet through 20. So now I've gone from -20 to 20 across the pipe. And now I'm going to put in the same numbers. So -25 and 24. So the only thing that is fanning is the X value, the stage left to stage right value. So when I press enter, those are going to appear right there. And again, we'll talk about Vectorworks import in a few weeks here. But if you don't have that information, but you know where your fixtures are hung, you can certainly patch them this way. And then you can see in the patch spreadsheet here, their Y value is all -25, their Z value is all 24, and then their X value does fan from -20 to 20, which ended up being 10-foot centers for these 5 fixtures. With moving lights, there's a lot less setup to do in patch because most of their information is going to come from their DMX values in the show. So, their color, their gobo, their shutters, that's all going to come from our programming, not from our setup. These fixtures here don't need any rotation information. They are hung out front. They are pointed straight down. If they were hung backwards from real life, like from the model, like if the tails in the model were upstage and in real life they were downstage, I could spin them 180 degrees to compensate for that. For today, I'm just going to leave them all at zeros, which is just fine. And then to demonstrate that, I'm going to jump into live here, and I'm going to go to full screen just for a moment so we can see a little better. So all of that, here, let's do a go to queue out. And then I'm going to grab 101 through 105. And I'll just open my ML controls here. So in live, I can control their pan and tilt. I can zoom them. I can pick a gobo, and we looked at this last week as well. I can sharpen that up. So all the things that we did with our static fixtures in patch, I can't do and I don't need to do with moving fixtures because that's part of my programming. Also in a few weeks, we'll talk about FPE, fixture pose estimation. So that is a way to use some really incredible math in the system to figure out where your moving fixtures, it only works for fixtures with pan and tilt, are hung in the space. So stay tuned in a few weeks for FPE and how to position your fixtures automatically that way. So that is how to add movers. Again, a lot less setup than static fixtures. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my split screen here. And I just want to take a look at removing information real quick. So if I grab channel 101 and I unpatch it, so if I, or not, excuse me, if I remove its address, so I'm going to say 101 at enter. So you can see the address went away in patch, but the fixture is still in the model, and that's because it still has positional information, which is all it needs. Remember the 11 through 16, our high side light, we never gave those addresses in the first place. So you do not need an address for a fixture to work in your model. And then with our other patch tools or unpatching tools, if I use my unpatch soft key, so just like it always has in EOS, if I go ahead and confirm that, it's going to remove the address, the fixture type, and now it's also removing the position and orientation information. So now that fixture has been removed from the model completely.
Rob, we specifically had a question on this that came up, and I hate
Yeah.
to interrupt you, but this seems like
No,
the
no.
right time to ask it. The question was, would the key command position at enter also do the same thing in terms of removing a fixture?
Channel at enter, is that what the question is?
Yes.
Position.
It was specifically, it was, you know, the syntax they were looking at was position at enter, but for a specific channel, yes.
Yep. Yeah. That's actually what we're doing next. Yeah. Perfect. So if we just remove the position, which I'll do here. So yes, position enter will remove it from the model. So you can see it did not reset those to zeros. It removed them. I do have, so one slight thing, and I'll do this with channel 1 actually, so that it doesn't drive me crazy anymore. So if I do orientation enter, so slightly different from position. So orientation enter will set those all to zeros. It doesn't remove the information. Position enter removes the information, which therefore removes it from the model. So with channel 1, I just did orientation enter, which got rid of that 45 that's been there since the beginning. So with channel 101, I just removed the address. With channel 102, I unpatched, which got rid of everything, including the position. With 103, all I did was remove the position. So that fixture is not in the model, but everything else is still in my show file. It's still in my palettes, it's still patched, it will still work in real life. It is just no longer in the model because the position is gone. And then the last example is I will actually delete a fixture, and this is kind of our nuclear option. So that's going to remove the address, the type, the position, and therefore remove it from the model, as well as gray that out in patch so it doesn't show up in the console anywhere. So the at enter, the unpatch, and the delete haven't changed, other than the unpatch and delete option now include the position and orientation, and the at enter does not. Just to clarify all that. Any more questions? I have a scheduled question break at this moment.
Yeah,
So,
we've got a couple.
Yeah, just say we're gonna move on to edit mode. So anything else about patch in general, we should hit right now.
Okay. Is there any way to see all the fixture profiles that have data? So if it wants to inform your design decisions. So just want to take a look and see everything that has 3D data.
There is not in the software. I believe we will one day publish a list. I think there is a list on the beta forums. I would imagine that is part of our documentation that we'd provide.
Okay. If a fixture does not have a 3D model yet, will the stock Gobo and color wheel information still be accurate, since that is from the fixture library?
Yes, that information will be there because it is, talking about moving lights, obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah, if it's been there before, it will continue to be there and to function correctly in the model.
All right. Invert pan tilt, does that affect the augmented?
Yes, it does.
All right. any way to basically hide a fixture?
Sorry, just to touch on that for one more second. The invert pan tilt, that's an example where, and I've had this experience in real life, where the model was moving opposite of my real life. So inverting there doesn't help because then they're both just going to swap. So that's the case of where you need to physically rotate the fixture 180 degrees, and then that can solve that problem. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. So is there a way to hide the fixture? So without actually removing the data, without taking out the position, can you just make the fixture invisible?
Yes, and we'll get to that in the editor. Yep.
Okay. Will unpatched channels produce light in Augmented?
Will unpatched channels produce light? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah.
No, well, unpatched channels don't have a fixture type, so they couldn't at all. If a fixture doesn't have an address, so like channel 101 right now has a fixture type and position, but no address information, as does all of our side lights. So that absolutely will produce light in Augmented, and can also be queued into your show. So you could queue things in, like let's say you had some rental fixtures, you're starting tech, but your rental got delayed or something. You could queue those into your show. There, you can store them in your queues and in your palettes, and then as soon as they arrive on site, all you have to do is put their address in, and you'll be good to go. All that information will be in the model as well as in your show data.
So just to clarify on that, is in order for you to see it in Augmented, you need to have a fixture type, but all you need is patch in order for you to live control whatever that fixture is.
I think I understand the question. I think the answer is yes. You do not need it to have an address in patch to control it in Augmented. And this has always been the case. So before we had a model here, before our 3.0, you could always give a channel a fixture type and queue it in without an address. It's obviously not going to output any DMX to your rig because it doesn't know where to send it. But then as soon as you add that address, anything you've previously stored on that channel is going to output. And so now we're taking that same idea and just applying it to the model.
All right. Is there any way to export these XYZ parameters right now? So if, for example, you're using Capture or using another actual visualizer, is there a way to build it in EOS and then export it out, export the XYZ coordinates and position coordinates?
Nick, do you know the answer to that? So we do have some export options.
Yeah, that all comes in, if you're merging it in, that'll come in via patch. So right now, there's not a lot of granularity as to what you're bringing in when you bring in patch, but technically that stuff will come in. So you can do all the other things you do with merging a patch, which is channel ranges. But if you want to bring in just positional data through an XYZ patch merge, you cannot.
But they're asking about if you can take what's in patch and export it out to another program.
Specifically, they were looking at Capture. So if we had a Capture file and if we had a console running Augmented and we had a computer running Capture and we moved the fixture, would we see them both moving in the same way?
I'm unsure of that. I know that Capture has just released a bunch of new coordination with EOS, right? So it's getting a lot of information. So with the newest version of Capture, I'm not sure what those different hooks are. So perhaps that stuff would live link if Capture has built that in. So far as export, yeah, you can export to CSVs and to Moving Light Assistant and other formats. That information, I believe, is part of those exports. So if you want to deal with that data that way, that's always a possibility.
I think that answered the question. Could you go over changing the beam angle again? You had showed it a little bit when you were talking about adding frost, but the question was specifically how do you change the beam angle to slide the barrel in an ellipsoidal, or if we were working with a Fresnel?
Sure. So I'm going to grab 11 through 16 here, which is our side light. So in patch on the augmented tab, we have beam angle and then beam edge parameters. So beam angle is like swapping the barrel of the lens tube. So I can make that a 36. I can make it a 14, whatever I want it to be. I'll go back to 36 here. And then beam edge is the sharpness that's running the lens in or out. So 50 is right in the middle, which is sharp. And then if I go to 0, that's going to be pretty fuzzed out. If I look at my, just look at channel 1. So if I look at a fixture without a gobo, let's get to where we can see it. Oh, let's do channel 2. I've got the beam hidden on that one. So this one doesn't have a gobo. It's just a regular fixture. So beam edge on this one is 0. So that's kind of fuzzy. And if I change it to 50, it's going to sharpen up that edge.
Yeah, I think just to clarify, there's no there's no like if you are dealing with a Fresnel, there's no like spot or flood option. You have to manually type in the angle and the edge for that fixture.
Correct. Yeah. Let's here. I'll go ahead and patch a Fresnel. Why don't we just look at that. And let's give it a position. There we go. Yeah, so beam angles, I would expect it's going to work the same way. I can, make it a 50, and then my edge on the Fresnel is never going to be sharp, of course. So it would, with a Fresnel, and these are kind of workarounds. Again, we're not trying to get 100% realistic data here. We're just going to get a quick visual representation of what's going on. So with a Fresnel, your beam edge would probably always be 0, and then your beam angle is going to be your spot flood. Excellent.
So talking about the models now, can we do multiple? I know we'll talk about the actual models later, but can we do multiple of those? So if you're in a television film set where you have 2 different locations, that kind of relates to what we have here in 2 different setups.
Yeah, so we'll cover that. It'll probably be in. We're going to look at some model objects if we have time today, and then we'll talk about movable scenery objects in a couple of weeks. But there is a way to handle that. But we'll cover that in a little while.
Excellent. How does Park work with Augmented with these sort of setups?
Park. So we looked at this last week, and now I want to do it just to make sure I'm telling the correct thing.
I just verified this. Park, because Park gets applied to output, it's not a part of like the bait engine and things like that. It will not affect your output in Augmented. So Augmented is what basically the board thinks it's doing, right? So if you have channel 1 at full in a queue or manually, it's going to show up in Augmented at full. And then if you park that channel to 0, that is only being applied to the output. So it will still show up in full and Augmented, but it will park it out for the output side of things. So that's how that's functioning.
Okay, excellent. We talked about origin points for a lot of these fixtures. Is there a way to actually see what the origin point is when you're putting them up? So how it's actually rigged in the system?
I don't believe we have a visual in the model at this time. There is a way in the fixture list, and sorry, while I have this here, let me just touch on that last question, Jason.
Yeah.
So so right now I have channel 101 at full, but it's parked at 0, and in the model we're seeing it at full. So just to illustrate what Nick was saying. So it's showing us the live value, not the parked value. Okay. So in patch, I'm going to go to let's go to full screen so you can see a little better. If we go into our fixture list here, so I'll just do it on a dimmer because it's easy. There is a new soft key that says physical data, and this is telling me, oh, this has changed. I wonder if it's different on the Fresnel. So these, interesting, are all at 000. I recall this being, yeah, so the moving light's different. The last time I looked at this, it had a Z offset of 4 inches. So meaning basically 4 inches above the yoke is where the C clamp would be. So that is a change from last time. So on our moving light here, we have an offset of 1 foot 6 inches. So my guess is that is from the center of the fixture, from the center of the object up to where the clamps would be. So that does explain why when we put those at when we put our source 4s at 0, they were kind of halfway in the floor. So that checks out. So this is where that information is, and we can edit those if we want to, but there's not a way currently in the model to indicate that.
Okay. Can you scale fixtures? For example, if you have a Fresnel and you have multiple wattage Fresnels, can you make that Fresnel object bigger?
You cannot. We specifically, so fixtures are handled very differently from all the other objects in the model. They are specifically unscalable. So yes, so for a Fresnel, and again, it's going to be more representational. You might have a big 20K Fresnel that looks like this tiny little thing in your model. So for right now, that's the limitations we're working with.
Excellent.
And some of that comes down to the differences between a true visualization tool and a support tool like we're doing with Augmented, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So this, again, from the beginning, we've called this a programming tool, not a visualizer. And these are kind of some of the where we've drawn those lines.
I have some information from Lowell about the green dot that someone asked that shows fixture orientation in the model. In a future build coming up as part of 3.0 in this data cycle, they are going to be putting in a green arrow that points the direction in which the fixture is facing. So that green dot where the tail used to be will be replaced by actual fixture orientation. They felt that was going to be clearer. But in future versions of Augmented post 3.0, later on, they're going to explore showing the tails and displays on the unit. So that is temporarily out of the code. They're coming up with something a bit different, and then we'll look at other representations related to orientation in future software. So that's where we're at.
Was there anything, and maybe you didn't have a chance to ask him, anything about base point, like showing the base point? That question had come up.
I didn't ask him, but while I got him online, I will find out and get you an answer at the next question break.
Great. Anything else, Jason? Are we ready to jump into edit mode?
Yeah, let's answer this question now. If you have a group of fixtures that you were trying to move proportionally, we talked about this a little bit, but can you just demonstrate again how to move a group of fixtures as if they were on a pipe to a different height without pointing them all back to a single point?
Yeah, so we can do that in Patch, and then in our next section here, we're going to look at how to do that actually in the model. So you have both options, but that syntax, again, so I'm going to say 1 through 9, and I'll come here, and I'm going to say position / either +3. We'll move those up. So I did // so we're skipping the X, skipping the Y. We're only affecting the Z parameter, the Z axis, or I can say // ±3 to go down 3 feet. And in the editor, we'll look at how to do that a little more tactfully.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's all the questions we have for now.
Great. So I'm going to go full screen here for the rest of this, and I'm going to go to queue out just to. Oh, it's my keyboard. Okay.
Oh, hold on 1 second, Rob.
Yeah.
The question was how to adjust the focus of them as a group, not to move them. Is it the same as same concept, just in rotation?
Oh yes. So that command line will affect rotation as well. So you can say orientation / plus 15, and that would be 15 degrees.
And this also gets into the aim tools that we can't demonstrate right now as well.
Yeah, exactly. So just to button that up, I'll say in patch, it's very, very rough it in. Like I'm not planning to focus lights this way myself, and I wouldn't expect anyone else to either. But I'm a big fan, and I did want to draw plots and stuff too. Like I like lights to be pointed the general direction they're going to be pointed. When I do a light plot, I don't have everything just pointing up. I have it pointing the way, so my electricians can rough those in at the beginning. So side lights are pointed to center, front lights are pointed upstage, that kind of thing. So I kind of equate this to that level of, it gives you a little information at a glance as to what that light is doing, but it is in no way the final product. And then so the aim tool is the way we'll use to really focus static fixtures. And like we said, that is undergoing some major surgery right now. So we're going to hold off on showing that today and wait until it's a little further down the line, and we'll look at that hopefully in 2 weeks.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure thing. Okay, so I've got my augmented tab full screen here, and we are going to dive into edit mode. So last week or 2 weeks ago in our previous session, we covered the camera focus labels. Actually, we didn't do labels or sticks, but we covered the light tools and the options here. So I'm not going to rehash any of those. I just want to double check that my quality is, yep, that's where I want it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up our edit mode. And we peeked at this at the beginning today, but now I want to really explain everything that's going on here. So the main space here in the center, this is our model. When we're in edit mode, there's a easy indication that we're there because we see the XYZ axes. We also have this grid on the floor that we'll talk about in a moment. But just a quick indicator that, oh yeah, I'm in edit mode. By default, we also give you some sidebar windows, and we can turn those on and off and move them around. We'll look at that shortly. But to go over all the parts here, so we have a few drop-down menus at the top. Under File, I can save as default model or reset model. So that's a great thing to do once you have your venue the way you like it. Your theater, your studio, if you've got that all in there just perfect, you could set that, or you could save that as your default, so you can always get back to that no matter what other objects you may have brought in or removed. Edit, we can get to our preferences window here. We'll look at that in a moment. And then we have cut, copy, and paste functions here. Obviously, you can use keyboard shortcuts for those, but if you prefer to use them with a mouse, you can do that here. And then the windows. So by default, let's talk about the ones that are here first, and then I'll open up the other ones. So by default, we get our library window on the left. So the library is where anything that can be put into your model exists. So we have group, node, label, and reference point, and we'll talk about those in a later session. We have our stock object library, which if we have time today, we'll get in here. We may have to push this to next week. We'll have to see where we end up. And then anything you've brought in, and actually I'm going to delete this one. That's from when I was practicing earlier. So this is an object that I brought in, and I will show how to do that. So this is anything that you can bring into your model. The hierarchy over here on the other side, I'm going to resize this just a little bit, The hierarchy contains anything that is in your model, and you can select things that way. So I have my ground, and I've selected it. Anything that you have patched and given positional data to will show up here. So there's channel 1, there's channel 2, etc. It's going to show up here, and then any scenic objects that are in your model are going to show up here. We don't have any yet, so that's why there aren't any. We also have by default 4 FPE points. Again, that's our fixture pose estimation that we'll cover in a few sessions. Once you have an object or objects selected in your hierarchy, you can modify them in the inspector. And there's several tools here that we'll get to. So the other windows that are not here by default but you can open are preferences. So that opens down here, and just to expand that to show it a little. A lot of these settings you can also get to through our options, like we looked at last week. We will come in here to set some snap defaults in a minute. So there's preferences, and then we also have a log window if you're able to read the matrix here or having any issues. Tech support, once we're released and we have phone support, they may ask you to look in here to kind of see what's going on. So I'm going to close logs for today. I'm going to leave preferences open and move that down here. So obviously we have kind of the resize tools like you've seen me using, pretty intuitive like you'd expect. We can also drag windows around, like maybe I want this one to be over here in between the hierarchy and the inspector. I can also bring them into a tab to format. So if I grab preferences and I hover over the hierarchy, see how it lights up and let go, now I have these, I've kind of hidden it under a tab, and I can reorganize those tabs if I want to. So you can really set this up however you like. You can set things up across the top, bottom, or each side, or you can close them all if you want to. It's really up to you. For now, I'm going to grab this and put it back over here, and we'll look at that in a moment. Okay, so we're going to start at look at our tools over here on the right. We looked at this last week, but as a reminder, the done button, when I click that, I have the options to apply or revert. So check mark or trash can. There isn't really an undo for moving objects. Fixtures are separate, and I'll talk about that next. But if I come in and change my camera view, and then I say discard changes or revert, it's going to forget all that information. If I've added some stock objects and then I say revert, those are all going to go away. The software really treats fixtures very separately from everything else in the model, and that's because they are tied to patch. And we'll look at that when we get to moving things around. But fixtures they're just a different animal than anything else that's in our model. Okay, so the grid here, I can turn that on or off, and you can see it disappears or appears. I have a few grid settings here in preferences. So I can set the width and the height, so the size of the grid. I can make it smaller than my floor if I want to, or larger. And then I also have a snap. I can also enable and disable it here. And then snap is our next one down. So I'm going to change this to be 6 inches on my snap distance in preferences here. And I can enable it or disable it. And you'll see the button over here on the right tracks along with that preferences box. So these come into play when we are moving objects around. So let's do that. So I'm going to zoom in here and I'll grab this guy. Okay, so the next tool down is our move tool, which is already highlighted. So when I select an object or objects, the model will show me the dimensions here, the XYZ. So this object, this fixture, is 10 feet negative 10 feet on my x-axis. It is 3 feet on my y and 18 feet on my z. And I can move this fixture by grabbing these handles. Make sure everybody can see this well. So if I grab the red, which we know is X, I can grab that and slide it around. And you'll see it's jumping in 6-inch increments. And that's because my snap function is turned on, and I set that increment to 6 inches. It does line up with the grid, but I don't have to have the grid there, so I can turn the grid off, and it's still going to snap in those increments. And that's going to apply to all 3 dimensions. So if I go upstage, it's going to be 6-inch increments. If I lower its trim, same thing there. If I hold shift while I'm moving something, it will do the opposite snap function. So while snap is off, if I hold shift, which I'm doing right now, now I have temporarily disabled snap. So now I can move it into any, it's going to move a lot more smoothly. Now I'm going to let go, and now it's snapping again. And then if I turn snap off, the opposite will be true. So I can move it smoothly. If I hold shift, now it's going to snap. So whichever one you prefer, you can have your default, and you can always override that quickly with shift. These, here, let's make this the 6 foot on the Z, and then I'm just going to pop over into patch. I believe that's channel 13, but here we'll look at all of our side lights here. So you can see that channel 13 here, its Z dimension has changed to 6 feet. So it is always instantly tracking with patch. I do not have to click close the editor and save changes like I do with other things. So the fixture data is always going back and forth. You know, so if I'm here in patch, let's change that back to, I think it was 18 on that fixture. When I go back into my model and back to edit mode, that fixture is now at 18. So whichever way you like to work, it'll store that information everywhere in the console. Okay, so our next tool is scale. And as we said before, we cannot scale fixtures. So I'm not going to, like that fixture's showing blue, meaning I don't have that ability. So right now, the only thing I have in my model that I can scale is my ground. So I'm going to select that and change my, zoom out a bit here. So with my scale tool, I can grab the red box here, and I can scale it on the x-axis. I can scale it on the y. This is a special object, so I can't do anything with the z. We'll look at scaling 3D objects once we import some, or once we bring some into our model. But if I grab the white box, that's going to proportionally scale it in all 3, in 2 dimensions this time, but it would do 3 dimensions on a 3D object. So the other way we can change position, or we can move or scale objects, is with the inspector. So let's bring that up a little bit here. And so here I have the floor selected, and the position and rotation, obviously rotation is going to be 0 because it's 2-dimensional, but the position is the origin. So the center of that floor is at the origin. Scale and size are linked together. So I'm going to set the scale all back to 1 here. And you can see that the size is 164 feet, which I happen to know is 100 meters, or 50 meters. I don't know. But I can punch in a specific dimension here. So I'm going to do 100 by 100. And you'll see the scale has changed. So that scale is simply based on its default values. So when the scale is 1, that's where the object started. So you can either change things by its scale or by its actual dimension, like we did here. So I've now got that at a 100-foot square. Another way I can scale or resize objects here is if I hover my mouse, my cursor over the X or Y, I can click and drag, and that's going to allow me to shift dimensions that way. So pretty much the same functionality as grabbing the handle in the model, just over in the inspector. So I'm going to set those back to 100 for now. We will talk about, as far as one thing I forgot to point out on position, let me select the fixture again. So you'll see position and rotation, and then you'll see world. So until we get into nesting objects, world and position are going to be the same number. So as I move that fixture, if I go back to move, you'll see they track the world and the position. So we'll cover that in a later session. But for right now, they're going to be the same, so it doesn't matter which one you're moving. Okay, so the next tool is rotate. So I'm going to zoom in a bit here. And let's look at rotate. So that is going to give us some, we've been calling these the planet rings around a fixture. So this allows us to, so this is going to tie to those rotate values in patch. So right now, you can see the Y is set to -45. And I can affect that by grabbing these planet rings, zoom in a little more. And I can move it on that axis, I can move it on the Y axis, or the Z, or we haven't done X yet, X axis. And then same here, I can come over here and I can punch in specific numbers. So if I say +45, it's going to point off stage, or I can come in and put it back to where it was, which is -45. When you're rotating and moving as well, an object, it is moving and rotating around its base point. So remember, the base point of this fixture, well, right now it is the center, but our moving lights, that base point was 1'6" above the center of the object. So if an object's base point is not the center of the object, just keep in mind it's going to be doing those things based on its base point. And then the other, and then we can also rotate with snap as well. So there is a rotation snap angle in preferences. So it's set to 5 degrees right now. To make it a little more obvious, I'm going to change it to 15 for today. And now with rotate selected, I can turn snap on. And now it's going to move in 15-degree chunks. And just like move, if I hold down shift, it's going to override that snap behavior and go back to rotating smoothly. And then in the inspector, I also have these rotate quick buttons. So I can rotate on around the x-axis in 90-degree increments. So these are all set to 90, but it's X, Y, and Z, just quick shortcuts. Really helpful. Again, if your fixture is 180, you can click that button twice and it's fixed. Or if an object is facing the floor instead of downstage or something. It's a quick way to fix that. And then the last thing in here is our local button. So under rotate, we have a local origin button. So this works with rotate and move. I want to show it with move first. So right now, the XYZ of the fixture, like where I can move it, is lining up exactly with the XYZ of the model, right? So it's directly up and down stage, directly or in line with our center line and our plaster line for X and Y. If I toggle on the local button here, those are going to shift to mimic the XYZ of the object. So now my Z is going to move it up and down at the angle that the fixture is rotated. So now I'm moving it at an angle, kind of upstage left there. Here, let's zoom out so we can see it on the floor. Notice I'm getting closer to my center line, farther from center line as I move. So just be aware. Sometimes you may need to move it locally. Sometimes you may not want to. So just be careful which setting that's on. And then this also applies to rotate. So let's go ahead and look at that. So right now the planet rings are exactly aligned with the space origin, the X, Y, and Z. If I turn on local, they're going to shift to mimic the objects. So now the Z is going to, I'll do it here, move right around. So now I'm just kind of spinning the fixture on the C clamp. And then that'll work with the other dimension or the other axes as well. Okay, so any questions about all that? I see we have about 15 minutes left. I was hoping to get to importing objects today, but I don't want to start that section now. I want to make sure we cover that in depth. So like we said at the beginning, we're going to be flexible. So we will move that into the session in 2 weeks. So let's go ahead and take questions, Jason, on anything regarding move, rotate, and any of the tools we've looked at here in the editor.
Yeah, sure. One quick note that Yuli brought up is that when the colors in the selection depends on where it's being selected. So if it's selected in EOS, it's gold. If it's selected in Augmented, it's blue. And it appears if it's selected in both, it turns into like this magenta color. So that's what the outlines are on the fixtures.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we'll go over that when we talk about aim, because I don't know if those colors are going to change. But yes, it is possible to select things on your command line. So there's that channel on the command line, and it's gold. And then if I select it in the editor, it gets, we'll go to move, you can see it better. It's that purpley, and I can select it in both, I believe. And
yeah, and I think a lot of that stuff has to do right now with how we're handling aim. So when aim gets redone, there may not be as much overlap as there is currently.
When you're doing the local rotation, is that a way to get around not having the barrel rotation when we're dealing with shutters?
I don't know if that would affect. I guess it would.
Yeah, so
it would affect the output.
I think that's if you just want to quick and dirty do it in Augmented, you need to rotate a Gobo or something like that. You don't like the orientation. All that stuff can be adjusted in Patch. But I also think that this is just a quick way to do it to rough it in. So, if you're looking at a show file that needs really accurate documentation, I wouldn't do it this way. But if you're just looking to, realign that blinds Gobo or whatever, this would be a quick and easy way to do it as well.
Yeah, so that does affect the output. So yes, you could do that. Good idea. And that would affect shutters as well.
Might be a way to create that patented banana shape for a Parcan too.
Oh, right, with our shutters and rotate.
Yeah.
Now it is the fixture.
And rotate the fixture.
The only and these are all sideways, which is something I was going to bring up to Lowell. Like they started out that way. The only thing is in the fixture itself in the model would be in the model you're physically rotating the whole fixture, so that might look a little weird. But again, this is representational. We're not going for 100% visual accuracy. So yeah, that would be a quick workaround.
One of the questions that was asked is best practice to overhang a fixture, or to since you can't see a yoke being rendered. Are we actually creating a representation between the fixture's position and a piece of structure, or are we just placing the fixture in null space at an XYZ coordinate?
Well, so, and again, we're not going to get there this week, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I will. We are going to add truss next time, or a pipe, something to put fixtures on. So maybe then we could look at the mechanics of overhanging a fixture.
Yeah, I think that'd be a better time to talk about it.
but I also think that the question was asking a little bit about, like, is there a such thing as a position in Augmented? And right now there isn't. We don't understand that this piece of model is designated as a particular lighting position, like Vectorworks or some other Viz programs do. So for now, that doesn't really exist. It is just XYZ space. It doesn't understand relative location to a hanging position in the same way that other drafting softwares do. So that's the way that it currently is.
I think that ties into exactly another question that just got answered. So.
Yeah, so one of the things, I just answered that since it was what we're going to be talking about next week. I didn't want to go too much into the depth of that. But the questions, I got a couple questions based on organization. Can you rename the fixtures? Can you change the order of the fixtures? And what's the importance of tags in the fixtures?
Yes, so all of that will be covered in a hierarchy session. The short answer is yes, you can do all those things. So we'll look at how to do that and talk about tags in a future session. But that is on the list for sure. Excellent.
So those are everything that's sitting in the queue right now for questions.
Okay. Well, great. Well, I'll kind of give our wrap up, and then if any other questions come in the next couple minutes, we can tackle those. So again, here I'm going to swap over to the list of topics again. Hopefully everybody can see that. So here was today. So obviously we didn't get to stock objects or importing 3D objects. We'll do those first thing next time. And then we'll continue on down through this list. So hopefully we'll have AIM sussed out by then. I think we're all looking forward to playing with that new tool, and that'll kind of wrap up our configuration part, and then we'll get into how to use the programming tool. So click to focus. We'll kind of look at stick beams, which we may have touched on in the first session. I can't remember now. And then we'll look at snapshots, like how to really hone in on your setup, and then XYZ palettes. And again, thank you. I appreciate everyone's flexibility as we all go through this together. So that it's possible that may get pushed. We'll just see how quickly all these things go. And then after that, we'll talk about staging mode, and there's the hierarchy and inspector tools that I alluded to. Those are right there. Scenic channels, which we'll have to do with, or could have to do with, like the multiple sets in a studio question that we had, magic sheets, and then our FPE is kind of down at the end. Those are FPE and the focus wand are going to be really hard to show in a webinar. We're talking about the best ways to show those to you guys. Those features are they're really difficult to fully grasp if you're not in a room with fixtures. So we're going to kick around some ideas and come up with the best thing we can do to show how those work. And then of course our Vectorworks stuff. So any other questions come in, Jason, or should we wrap it up? Let's come back to here.
And Jeff just said, yes, we are doing these sessions every other week. So the next session is not next Thursday, it's the Thursday after.
June 18th will be our next one. 2 weeks from today. Yes, thank you.
It's still a good idea to follow the study hall calendar, which you can find in my ATC. For any of the events that are happening. We are doing events weekly, just not this event weekly. So right now we've been going back and forth between other EOS events that Nick has been putting together. You had a great session last week on Magic Sheets that I thought was fantastic. And these sessions that we're doing specifically for Augmented. So keep an eye on the schedule. There's also a whole schedule of things that are going on with Aug. And we've been adding some rigging sessions and some other sessions as well. So we're definitely keeping Study Hall moving forward. Also, a quick reminder to everyone, this session has been recorded, and those recordings become available about 24 hours after they're done, at which point we are posting these into the YouTube channel on learning, our YouTube study hall channel, where you can find these sessions, and as they come together, we can start putting them together as a curriculum. We'll do that as well. You can also find any of the sessions that we've been running for the last couple of months on that YouTube channel. With that, I'm going to turn off the recording so we can move into after hours chat, and thank all of our presenters today, and thank all of our guests as well.